What if the Earth stopped spinning? For just 5 seconds. Not forever, not for a day, just 5 seconds. It sounds harmless, almost trivial, but it wouldn't be. Because right now, as you watch this, Earth is already moving at extraordinary speed. At the equator, our planet spins at roughly 1,000 miles per hour, and everything on the surface moves with it. The oceans, the atmosphere, cities, aircraft, you. We don't feel that motion because everything around us is traveling together. The ground beneath your feet, the air above your head, the buildings around you, all of it locked into the same rotation. But if Earth suddenly stopped, even for only 5 seconds, almost nothing on the surface would stop with it. The planet would halt, but the momentum of everything not anchored deep into the crust would keep going. The air would keep moving, the oceans would keep moving, and every person, car, aircraft, and structure on the surface would still be carrying the speed of a spinning world. For 5 seconds, Earth would become a planet-wide collision between the ground and everything above it. And the worst part is, the first second would already be enough to destroy entire cities. But stopping the planet is only half the disaster, because the Earth may freeze in place, while the atmosphere, the oceans, and everything on the surface keeps moving at nearly 1,000 miles per hour. And in the next few seconds, that momentum would turn the entire planet into a weapon. The moment Earth stops, you do not stop with it. Neither does your car. Neither does the airliner above you. Neither does the ocean. Because even if the planet suddenly freezes in place, everything on its surface is still carrying the momentum of Earth's rotation. At the equator, that speed is roughly 1,000 miles per hour. That's faster than a bullet train, almost as fast as the speed of sound. And if the ground beneath you stopped instantly, your body would keep moving east at that speed. For anyone standing in the open, it would be like being thrown sideways across the planet by an invisible force. Buildings wouldn't save you. Most buildings are designed to resist gravity, wind, earthquakes, but not the sudden sideways impact of an entire city still moving while the planet beneath it has stopped. Cars would be hurled across highways, trains would tear off their tracks, aircraft would lose control in a violently shifting atmosphere. Glass, steel, concrete, fuel, and debris would all become projectiles. And the closer you were to the equator, the worse it would be, because that's where Earth's rotational speed is highest. Entire skylines could be shredded in seconds, not by an explosion, not by fire, but by momentum, by the simple fact that the planet stopped and almost everything on it did not. And this is still only the beginning, because after the ground destroys the surface, the atmosphere arrives, and when it does, Earth's real nightmare begins. But the ground tearing cities apart would only be the first layer of destruction, because even after the surface is hit, Earth's atmosphere would still be moving at nearly the same speed. And when an entire planet's worth of air keeps traveling after the world beneath it stops, the result wouldn't be wind. It would be a global wall of violence. If the surface impact didn't kill you, the atmosphere probably would. Because when Earth stops spinning, the air doesn't suddenly freeze in place. It keeps moving, just like the oceans, just like the people, just like the debris and the aircraft and the collapsing cities below. And at the equator, that moving atmosphere would still be carrying rotational speed measured in the hundreds to nearly 1,000 miles per hour. That means Earth wouldn't just experience strong winds, it would be hit by a global atmospheric shock. A wall of air still racing eastward, slamming into a planet that has suddenly stopped beneath it. In many regions, the winds could become supersonic, fast enough to rip roofs from buildings, fast enough to flatten forests, fast enough to turn glass, steel, concrete, and human debris into airborne shrapnel. And unlike a hurricane, this wouldn't be a storm moving across one coastline, or one country, or one ocean basin. It would be a planetary blast wave, a moving atmosphere scraping across the surface of the Earth with catastrophic force. Cities already damaged by momentum would be torn open even further. Skyscrapers, weakened by impact, would face hurricane-force pressure far beyond anything they were built to survive. Aircraft still in the sky would be swallowed by violent turbulence and impossible crosswinds. Wildfires would ignite, power grids would fail, and in just seconds, the boundary between air and land would become almost meaningless, because the atmosphere itself would be acting like a weapon. Not a breeze, not a storm, but a high-speed fluid mass, wrapping around the planet and shredding everything in its path. And even that still wouldn't be the end, because once the air and the land are in chaos, the oceans would be next. And when an entire planet's water keeps moving after the Earth stops beneath it, coastlines would cease to exist. By now, the surface would already be shattered. The air would be tearing across the planet. Cities would be collapsing. Aircraft would be gone. But Earth still has one more moving system left to unleash. Because the atmosphere isn't the heaviest thing still carrying the momentum of a spinning world. The oceans are. And when all of that water keeps moving after the planet stops beneath it, entire coastlines would vanish. By this point, much of Earth's surface would already be in ruins. Cities near the equator would be shredded by momentum. The atmosphere would be tearing across continents. But then the oceans would arrive. And unlike the air, the oceans carry far more mass. They are slower to react, harder to stop. And if Earth suddenly froze beneath them, that water would not stay where it was. It would keep moving. Thousands of miles of ocean still carrying the momentum of a spinning planet, surging eastward across coastlines that had no chance of holding it back. This wouldn't be a normal tsunami. It wouldn't be one wave, or even a series of waves caused by an earthquake. It would be a global displacement of water. A planetary-scale surge of oceans still trying to move around a world that had suddenly stopped beneath them. Ports would vanish first, then coastlines, then entire cities. New York, Rio, Lagos, Jakarta, Mumbai. Any civilization built near sea level would face walls of water moving with catastrophic force. Ships would be thrown inland. Harbors would be erased. Bridges would snap. Oil terminals, refineries, gas lines, and power plants would rupture under the combined pressure of flooding, debris, and impact. And where fuel and fire met the wreckage of entire cities, new disasters would ignite. Electrical systems would fail, communication networks would collapse, transportation would become almost impossible. The few regions not immediately destroyed by impact, wind, or water would be cut off from everything else. And if the planet remained stopped long enough, the oceans wouldn't just flood coastlines, they would begin redistributing themselves. Because Earth's rotation doesn't just move the planet, it also helps shape where the oceans settle. Take that away, and the balance of the surface begins to change. Sea levels would fall in some regions, rise in others, and the geography of the world itself would begin to shift. By now, the question would no longer be whether modern civilization survives. It wouldn't. The real question would be whether anyone survives the next 5 seconds at all. Because Earth still hasn't finished this disaster. After the impact, after the atmosphere, after the oceans, there's one final twist. The planet starts spinning again. At this point, the world would already be almost unrecognizable. The surface would be shattered, the skies would be lethal, the coastlines would be gone, and whatever was left of civilization would be drowning in darkness, fire, and debris. But the 5 seconds still aren't over, because if Earth only stopped temporarily, then the planet wouldn't stay still forever. It would start spinning again. And that restart could trigger a second global catastrophe. If Earth stops spinning for 5 seconds, then 5 seconds later, it has to start spinning again. And that may be the cruelest part of the entire scenario, because by the time those 5 seconds end, the planet would already be in chaos. Cities would be burning, the atmosphere would be tearing across the surface, floodwater would be swallowing coastlines, aircraft would be gone, power grids would be down, and anyone still alive would already be fighting to survive a world that had been violently brought to a halt. Then suddenly, the ground starts moving again. And once again, the Earth beneath everything would accelerate eastward. Not gently, not gradually, but in this scenario, almost instantly. Which means the second disaster begins. Because now the surviving debris, the floodwater, the collapsing structures, the atmosphere, and any people still alive would all be hit by a planet that had started moving again beneath them. Anything that had already been thrown loose during the stop could be thrown again. Buildings weakened by the first impact could collapse completely. Floodwater surging inland could be violently redirected. Ships stranded inside cities could become moving battering rams. Fires could spread into new fuel zones. And whatever was left of the atmosphere would now be forced to readjust a second time. In other words, the first catastrophe was the stop. The second catastrophe is the restart. A world that had already been ripped apart would be hit by another global acceleration event before it ever had the chance to recover. And for anyone somehow still alive after the first 5 seconds, that restart could be the moment that finally kills them. But there's one last question left. Could anything like this actually happen? Could Earth ever really stop spinning? Or is this entire nightmare impossible? To answer that, we need to leave the disaster behind for a moment and look at the real physics of the planet beneath our feet. So, could this actually happen? Could Earth really stop spinning for 5 seconds? In reality, no. At least not in any way we currently understand. Earth doesn't spin because something is actively forcing it to. It spins because it has angular momentum, a kind of rotational inertia the planet has carried for billions of years, ever since the early formation of the solar system. And stopping something as massive as Earth, even for a moment, would require an almost unimaginable amount of energy. Not the energy of a nuclear weapon, not the energy of an asteroid impact, but something on a planetary scale. A force so extreme it would be almost beyond comparison in human history. In other words, Earth cannot simply switch off. The planet won't suddenly stop spinning one afternoon. There is no known natural process that could quietly pause Earth's rotation for 5 seconds and then start it again. But that doesn't make this thought experiment meaningless, because what it reveals is just how much of our world depends on motion we never notice. The length of our days, the shape of the oceans, the behavior of the atmosphere, the stability of every city, coastline, aircraft, and human body on the planet. All of it depends on a rotating world that feels still only because we move with it. And maybe that's the strangest part of all. Right now, as you sit there completely motionless, you are standing on a planet spinning through space at nearly 1,000 miles per hour. You just never feel it, until you imagine what would happen if it stopped. And maybe that's the strangest truth of all. The world feels still, safe, motionless, but it never was. Because beneath every ocean, every city, every mountain, and every quiet room on Earth, our planet is spinning through space at nearly 1,000 miles per hour. We just never notice it, until we imagine what would happen if it stopped. If you enjoy exploring the biggest mysteries of our universe, from impossible space scenarios to the real science behind them, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Into the Cosmos and join thousands of curious minds as we uncover the wonders, dangers, and unanswered questions hidden across the universe. Until next time, keep looking up